Hey everyone, you're watching Not Keeping It Real. I'm David Crane along with Tony Calvin. How's it going this week, Tony?
Doing really good, Dave. How are you?
Good, good. That's a lie. No, I part of the reason why this episode is a little delayed is I was finishing like all the paperwork for trying to go to trying to be admitted to grad school. Trying to go to grad school probably want to get me into grad school, but trying to apply to grad school. That's what I was doing. So it was a lengthy process and
Probably, I can only imagine.
So, but I mean, of course, like despite that, I had time to watch Wandavision this week and Young Rock this week. So I'm way ahead of the game.
Nice.
Did you watch Young Rock this week? How are you doing on that?
I saw the first episode and I saw half of the second.
Okay, so what made you stop watching this?
Well, I just got busy. I'm like, wait, because my thing is, after the first episode, I was like, okay, I know what I want to say on this show. Maybe if we continue to review it, I'll be up to date. But I thought this was just a primer. Just what do you think of the show overall? Because the thing is, we haven't discussed it before, so I'm curious what you think of the show.
Well, same here. So, well, let's start with me. I've watched all 3 episodes. Okay, so I watch a lot of television. Like I'm right there with Wanda Maximoff. Like I really watch a lot of TV, folks. I've been watching it. TV practically raised me. And I will say that like I get what doesn't work on Young Rock, and I like Young Rock. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna keep watching. And that's because I'm interested in the subject matter. I like The Rock. Rock is a really good, genuine guy, extremely intelligent, and I think that's like if he wasn't so much that, if he wasn't such a genuine guy, you'd be like, oh, they really want The Rock to look really cool, like really smart and like virtuous here throughout this entire show. Like, is he actually running for 2032 presidency? Because he's just like kind of Mr. Perfect, and it's like he is like a really good guy, and he's done some things, and that's the one thing they talk about, how he's made some mistakes, like he shoplifted and this and that, like made some mistakes, but they don't show the shoplifting, like that would make a really fun anecdote, like The Rock shoplifting as a teenager, or I don't think he did as a child, but as a teenager, and like I watched lots of Wonder Years, like I watched that several times, actually rewatched it. Which is a coming of age story, much like this. If nobody else has watched Wonder Years, or somebody else out there, I should say, hasn't watched Wonder Years, that's what it's about. It's about this guy growing up in the 60s, and we get to see him at his best and his worst. Fast forward to a show currently on that's kind of stale at this point, The Goldbergs, which is all about a kid in the 80s, about a real-life family, and a director, Andrew Goldberg. I don't know what his first name is, but anyway, the kid in the story, he's a real life person. He made this show and all grown up, and basically you see him doing a lot of dweeby things and a lot of stupid things, and it's played for laughs, right? And this is a sitcom. This is like a family sitcom, Young Rock, and we don't get to see The Rock acting too foolish. And I feel like that's genuinely like what happened in his story. It's not like he's like, oh, and then this stuff happened, and I look like a complete idiot, but I'm going to cut all that out and only make myself look good. I feel like he pretty much was that guy that they're portraying, but that's not that funny, Like, you need somebody to laugh at, and The Rock needs to get laughed at in this show. And he's great at laughing at himself in other movies when it's a fictional character, but when it's his actual story, I don't know if they need to like implement some kind of like creative like narrative like that might not have really happened in there, like to make it just like a little bit more interesting, because he just comes off like he always does the right thing pretty much, like on the stories that you see. I don't know. I can't get into that. I don't know. That's the problem.
That's the thing. He has this persona where it's like he can't be like this 24/7. It seems so phony. It seems like he's taking on a role, and it's like, come on, dude. Just you're kind of hoping someone in catering would spill coffee on him or something, so we could see the real Rock, or at least see Rock when he's that. the fact that we're getting this cardboard cutout of this perfect guy. It's funny. He talks about running for office, but it's like, okay, people want to see your humanity, and that's sort of the point of the show, I guess. In theory, I mean, the premise of the show when it starts is supposed to be Rock doing interviews and whatnot, and it's like, yeah, but you still come off really phony. It's like you're always positive and you're always a fountain of knowledge, and it's just like, okay, homie, we saw you in wrestling. You ain't perfect, all right?
Right. I mean, there was 1996 to 1997. Well, probably even before that with Flex Canavan and USWA, but like there was that like Die Rocky Die year, and there was that, and I feel like I feel like he's very close to perfect as a person, like honestly, and I feel like there's a lot of people that also appreciate that image of The Rock that he projects, and frankly, I mean, there's never been somebody better on the mic than The Rock in wrestling, right? And he basically went into Hollywood pretty much like, he's a wrestler with that stigma, and now he's the biggest action star in Hollywood. I mean, he's kind of like a guy who, he's like Kurt Angle being an Olympic gold medalist. It's like, yeah, he worked really hard to get there, and he's really, really good at doing that. So don't be surprised when he's like really good throughout, like whatever he does. I mean, it might not be that relatable to us humans, but that's I feel like that's pretty much who The Rock is. But you need to again have something in there, and you see it a little bit in this character of his father, a little bit, because if you paid attention to wrestling enough, that his father is not quite perfect. I will just say he's kind of like this I don't know. He's just your average wrestler guy, like Dad. And
No. Let me specify it, Crane. He's your average wrestler he's your average wrestler from the 80s.
Yes.
He's a giant. What I'm trying to say is he's a giant carny, everyone.
Yes. I would agree with that. I would say that's true. And he even calms his son a little bit, in the second episode, as you saw, where it's like, yeah, it's like a big college show or whatever, and it turns out to be like at a swap meet, and that's still wrestling. And that's definitely, I mean, that's more 80s wrestling, but that's just still wrestling in general.
Funny, they bring up the gimmick thing, working the gimmick, but I wish they would just come out and call it for what it is, carny. Because the thing is, people don't understand gimmick. It's kind of a foreign concept, but if you tell them carny, most people know exactly what you're talking about, and that registers with a lot of people. Gimmick is too wrestling, too insider, whereas carny, I feel like everybody can relate to the phony carny person.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I just been in the wrestling bubble for so long. You're carny, and I'm like, it depends on your age. If you're maybe our age and older, then yes, I completely agree with you for the most part. If you're younger, carnies, who goes to a carnival anymore? Children.
Yeah, but when you say the term carny, everyone knows, okay, this thing isn't on the level, something's up. This guy's putting on a facade. No, and then that's not something unique to Rocky Johnson. That was everybody in the business prior to. I was trying to think of a time, but just really 1980s and prior till, just people being, wacky, telling lies, or just exaggerating the truth. And it's nothing like a personality fault. That's just the wrestling. That was the wrestling industry. And
kind of also being a little bit defensive of who you are out in the the public and everything. Just kind of being protective, I guess, is another word for it. Obviously, if one wants to go down that route, obviously The Rock might be extremely protective of who he is. But no, just protective. I've actually met people who have randomly met The Rock's dad, Rocky Johnson, at wrestling shows Raws and stuff like that. And he just basically you couldn't really say anything bad about him, but it was just everything that we just said about him seems legit. He's basically kind of a carny, kind of works.
He was of his era, is what I'm trying to say. This isn't a dig at Rocky Johnson. This is he is a product of his times. I'm sure.
Right? If he was a product of his time. If he was more productive at the time, wouldn't he have a crack problem and 8 kids or something? No, I'm just kidding. Right? I mean, as far as being a wrestler in the 80s, having drug problems, if he was more productive at the time, he might not even be alive right now.
Well, he's not now. So.
Well, that's not what I meant. It was more product of his time as an 80s wrestler. He wouldn't have made it into the 90s
Okay.
for very long. And if he did, then he would have worked it for WCW. But I don't know when Rocky Johnson's last year was in wrestling, but yeah, he was a former WWF or maybe WWF World Tag Team Champion. So a little no. But yeah,
That meant something.
I think that second episode is actually the best episode of the three that I've watched so far, and some of our reviewers might have watched all three. Second episode, like basically the snobby girl gets to be foolish, and actually The Rock gets to be a little bit foolish because he's all like, doing anything for this girl, be a typical teenage guy doing anything for this girl until he got faced with this, consequence of like, standing up for his dad and staying for the show, doing the right thing, or he's like, catering to more of her crap. And at that point, he had catered so much of her crap, you would think that, okay, well, this is where he's going to cater to her crap, and then he's going to feel like kind of regretful. And now I'm getting really bad noise in the background, sorry.
That's fine.
He's going to cater to her crap, he's going to leave the wrestling show, and then he's going to feel like a fool afterwards. And that's kind of like more of a normal show does. No, The Rock does everything right. He's kind of like the Doug. If you remember the Doug Funny from the Nickelodeon cartoons?
Yes.
He just does all this. Like if he wasn't like, he didn't look like he was 30 when he was like 16 and like a super athlete and all that. Like, you kind of be like, this guy's kind of a dork. He's always doing the right thing all the time. Like, what the hell is that? So anyway, so I thought that was a better episode though, because he got to look like a little bit more human up until a point, and then the girl that he wants to get with was like really the person you're supposed to laugh at, right? Like, she's kind of like the person that's like, okay, well, and also like the other people at the high school were pretty lame, right? Like the guy that also liked the girl, so it's a bit of that going on. But that's really annoying.
Someone working on something?
Someone's working on something, so just keeps going doing stuff. So anyway,
that's fine. Just acknowledging it so people don't think they're crazy.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So let's. I will say, since you didn't watch the third episode, Vince McMahon is in the third episode.
Oh, nice.
And,
my God, who do they get to play Vince? Just
some white dude. I don't know. I don't recognize
casting choices have been kind of questionable. Like, okay, the wrestlers that are close to Rock, I for a TV show, they're fine. I like it, but that one scene where he's wrestling Ric Flair, that one's embarrassingly bad.
Yeah, that one was not a good Ric Flair. No, that was like maybe damn it, Buddy Landau. That could have been Buddy Landau.
No, it was supposed to be Ric Flair, I think.
No, I know it was supposed to be Ric Flair, but I'm just saying, like Buddy Landau is a Ric Flair impersonator. Like, basically, that was like his gimmick. As much as like the Honky Tonk Man was like an impersonator of Elvis, Buddy Landau was pretty much an impersonator of Ric Flair. So, somebody like 60 years old or older will get that joke out there and they'll laugh, but maybe not. Maybe nobody our age.
Listening too much Jim Cornette there.
Yeah, well, I like my old school wrestling. What can I say? Yeah, so the third episode has like Vince McMahon, and he's portrayed pretty kindly. I think it was like the kindest portrayal of Vince McMahon. He wasn't like a saint. He's not like the Rock saint, but he just calls up Mama, the grandma, Rock, which I don't know her name, so whatever. But she ran wrestling shows for many years in Hawaii, and she's getting some of the WWF guys to work her show. But in the end, Vince has to call her back and say, hey, like, Billy Joel is taking up most of the month at Madison Square Garden, and we only have this one date, and I know it's the same date as your show, so I'm going to have to take most of my guys back from your show. I'm sorry, but, and he's really apologetic. He's pretty cool about it, but it's just a shitty situation. And, that was, like, the MacGuffin, I guess, of that episode. And, like, he comes off, like, pretty genuine and nice. But again, not perfect. So we'll see where that goes, because Vince is a lot more than that. I'm not saying he's an asshole. I'm not saying he's completely out of touch with reality, and like today in the year 2021, maybe. But But like, he's a lot more interesting in person, and that's why they're making a movie after him, right? So I mean, it's not just like he's like a nice guy. It's like maybe he was a nice guy sometimes. He's also an asshole sometimes. Some other times. So
Maybe you should bring up a movie. I feel like this is what this show should have been. They really wanted like a really good like rock story, it should have just been a biopic movie. The fact that it's a TV show, it's like, okay, we're going to tell a lot of stories that are not always necessarily interesting, but fill the time hole or whatever. And the production value isn't the best. So I'm just like, okay, this is just a sitcom. It's fine. And I guess maybe long term it's going to have problems with material because it's like, okay, so are we just going to keep doing until we finally get to modern day rock? Is that the whole point of the show? And how do you do something like that with the show that, pretty much lives and dies with, are we being renewed this season? Are we being renewed this season? So it's like, okay, it would be nice if we got those later years of the rock, especially when, he debuts and then when he finally gets over, becomes the mega star. But it's like, okay, it's a TV show. You kind of want to have a little bit, some legs going forward, but at the same time, it's like we're living and dying if we're renewed for another season.
Yeah. I mean, I think the pilot kind of shows that like they can learn, they have 3 mini stories. So at different points of his life. And he kind of showed that like, okay, well, this is what the show this is what our vision for the show. This is what the show can be. But as you see in the second and third episode, it's like a full, story. It's not like a side of, it's like not a short story. It's a, medium-sized story, and it takes up the whole 25 minutes or whatever. So
I just call this show "Everybody Hates Rock" because
man,
it's like that Chris Rock show, and I'm like, okay, I get what you're trying to get, but it's not 100% what I wanted, but it's good enough. It's a good show. It's a good quality show. It's just not exactly what I was hoping for.
Like a part of me thinks that outside of like just straight up rock fans, which there are a lot, and there are a lot that honestly don't know that much about him being a wrestler. Some that don't even know he was a wrestler. Your screen's really black for some reason, but that's cool. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I didn't even know that he was a wrestler. I met people like that are just like, oh, he was a wrestler? What? It's like, yes, he definitely was. And I think it's kind of interesting to show to new people, either they're a rock fan or not, like a bit of the wrestling business. But if you take yourself out of fandom for the rock, whether it be from wrestling or otherwise, I think it's kind of like a passable show for like parents that want to watch a show in front of their like 6-year-old kid. Like it's kind of like it kind of appeals to the parents still a little bit, but it's mostly just so like basic and like, I don't know, moral that it's like, oh, yeah. I mean, there's not. It's very limited in its scope because of it. Because it's so moral. And most of these stories, I've read the Rockstar autobiography, which if you know much about that, there are some bullshit stories in there from what I hear. People that are like, I think he lost his virginity to his like babysitter at like 13 story. There's a story. See, that would be an interesting episode. That would be a really interesting episode. But
that's not the primetime NBC show. That's why I said a biopic would probably be more appropriate if you're trying to tell the rock story. But they clearly just want a sitcom, and they're just basing it around the rock. I just feel like you would have been better off if you're going to go the sitcom route, then just do a sitcom starring modern day rock. But it is what it is. I like it, and it's good.
And I'm sure WWE would be down for this, and they probably won't even want much money on the side. And now that Peacock's working with them and everything, like what they could do if they want to make it more sitcom-y, because you really do need more elements of humor than they're providing for us in these first three episodes. And the way you can do that is if you do like kind of start him out. Like I would say even some of his stories when he was, I think it might have been the Canadian Football League. And he actually this is a really interesting story in his book where he was so poor in the Canadian Football League that he him and his friends at the hotel that they were staying at, or not hotel, but apartment, like cheap apartment that they had, to get beds, they got soiled mattresses from the dumpster of a shoddy hotel, and then they cleaned that up with a bunch of bleach and all these cleaners and this and that, and that's The Rock slept on what was a soiled mattress, and that's an interesting story to me. But if they wanted to go more like funny sitcom for general, they could have just done like early wrestling business. Like once he gets in there, even USWA a little bit, and then like when nobody likes him, but then people do start to like him a little bit. They could do the whole scope of that story, and there would be way more elements of humor in there. So I don't know. It's a really interesting life. So if it goes 8 seasons, might get to that. I mean, really, it just comes down creativity or not. Like it really just comes down to like what the ratings get, and the ratings are pretty solid for it right now. So speaking of someone who's not perfect, other than us, of course, Zack Snyder.
Jeez.
Yeah.
People don't know. You've been discussing this from the inception of the show, and you've kept postponing, and I'm like, thank God, because we have nothing nice to say about this. It's just let it die. What's that?
It'll be fun though. That's the thing. Like it'll be a fun conversation.
No, I'm saying just let the cut die. Nobody wants this. Stop trying to shine a turd. It's still a turd. There's nothing you can do to try to save that movie.
So I would agree with like all this, except there's a ton of fans online that are all about the Snyder. I don't know if they're like 13 years old or not, but like they really want to see it. So that's why I think it's relative. I think it's topical.
I don't think it's real.
What?
I don't think it's real. Dave. As long as we're talking about carny stuff,
Russian bots.
I think they're Russian bots.
Okay.
I think Zack Snyder paid a bunch of Russian bots to say, "Oh, we want the Snyder cut. We want the Snyder cut." I haven't met a single person. Notice I use the qualifier "met." I haven't met a single person that cares about the Snyder cut. And keep in mind, I'm not Joe Public. I'm a guy who goes to comic book conventions, read comic books. So I'm not exactly, your average person walking the street.
You're surrounded by people who love the stuff that we love, comics, movies, and all that shit.
There's zero interest in this thing. And I understand they want content for their new platform, HBO Max, but is this really the way you want to go? You guys have Doom Patrol, which I always say is a really good show that everybody needs to check out. That Harley Quinn animated series.
That's really good.
Everybody needs to check it out.
Totally.
This is not how you attract people to your new platform, your new streaming service.
Except for there's so much to support the counter argument to this. All right. So except for the fact that Warner Brothers is a studio, which, basically HBO, I don't know if HBO runs them or Warner Brothers runs them. I don't know.
It's 2021. Everyone's in bed with each other. I get it.
Yes. It's all the same company. It's DC Comics. As a studio, Warner Brothers' studio has no fucking clue. Like, they have no clue. And they've just started to get a little bit of a clue, I have to say, in the past year or two, maybe 3 years. But they really have no fucking clue how to run DC movies at all. Like television, they're spot on. They do a great job. They do a better job, arguably, on their TV shows than, Marvel did up until like 2 months ago. Like they do a great job on their television, but their movies, they're just they're all over the place. It was hot shotting to put Batman versus Superman and to have Snyder in front of, as the man that made it all happen, the guy in charge of it all. This is not the right decision, especially if you watch Superman Man of Steel, because he doesn't understand the character of Superman at all. He doesn't know how to direct that kind of character. He made the most Batman-like Superman portrayal on the screen ever in Superman Man of Steel. Going forward, Justice League, you don't have a Flash movie yet. You don't have a Cyborg movie yet. Never will. But you did have, I think, Aquaman. No, Aquaman hadn't come out yet when that originally came out. Aquaman came out the following year. Yeah. So you didn't have a Batfleck movie yet. Ben Affleck is Batman. So unless we count Batman for Superman, which really shouldn't count. That's maybe a second Superman movie. It's more about Superman, certainly. But these characters were not well established at all. They just put it out there just because they wanted to be the Marvel money, the money that Marvel got, and they didn't care about quality control. It was just putting it out there. Yeah. And to be fair, like in most cases, if you want somebody to do a decent trailer without like the same song in the intro of like I forget what's like the Sound of Silence song or something, like if you cut that song out, if you wanted Snyder to make a really good trailer for you, this was not the one. But usually he's the kind of guy that you can get your attention as a viewer for 2 or 3 minutes, because he's really good at visuals. I actually was a Snyder fan at one point. It happened. All right. Like back when Watchmen came out.
No, he's had a couple good movies under his belt. It's not fair to say he's awful, but
I don't know. Let me just I don't know. I go that far.
300? That was good.
What's that?
So didn't he also direct 300? That was a good movie.
Maybe. I'm gonna look that one up while I talk about this too. So but 300 aside, which didn't really have much of a story, but also in the comics did not have much of a story because they actually expanded the story from what little they had in the comics. In the comics, it's like a 4-issue miniseries, and it's mostly just like the fight scenes. So they actually expanded on the story. The story itself is a film, and within the film is not very good, but whatever, To me, Zack Snyder, I liked him. He's just like my relationship or my fandom of Vince Russo. All right, he's like the Vince Russo of comic book movies.
I think you're too harsh.
What?
I think you're being too harsh. But
no. I'm really not. All right. So Attitude Era, Vince Russo did a really good job for the most part. I just rewatched the WWE stuff. I just rewatched the WCW stuff on its first stint, and I'm like, oh my god, like I don't know, like if it just as a kid I liked it, but like as an adult, I'm like, this is giving me whiplash with all this stuff going back and forth for no particular reason, kind of like a pinball game. It's ridiculous. Just stuff to have stuff, and I think maybe Zack Snyder. I feel like he must have had a filter a little bit on Watchmen because Watchmen is a movie I actually really like. Now, not everybody liked Watchmen. There was non-fans of the comics like that hadn't read the comics, and some of them that had read the comics that were like, "Oh, why did they show a blue penis?" And like that was like their whole reason for not liking the movie. It was like you saw a blue dick in there. It's like, okay, whatever, bro. And then like they changed the ending at the end, and I thought they made it more logical actually, the ending versus the comic. But overall, I thought, it just was scene for scene, just like the comic. And some fans who had read the comics were like, well, like I actually don't like the movie that much because it's better in the comics, and all you're getting in the movie is pretty much the same thing as the comic, but just not as good because you're not getting anything new and creative. It's nothing new is being said here. And I hear that. So, but I was like one of the few fans that liked Watchmen. Or not, I should say, I want one of the few fans. I feel like it was a 50-50 proposition. I feel like half the people out there liked Watchmen. They thought it was great, like I did. Other half there was like, what's wrong with you? So
I thought it was just okay. I'm sure they're right in the middle with a lot of people. I thought it was okay.
I thought it was great. I actually really liked it. So maybe that was the problem. I was just like, it's great. And people were like, dude, no, it's not. So, and this is 2009 too. So like the bar was a little lower. A few months after I saw that movie in theaters, of course, Zack Snyder was doing a panel at Comic-Con. And I was like, okay, he's doing this panel at Comic-Con, and it's at night on a Saturday night, and it was like a director's cut, or not direct, yeah, it was a director's cut of Watchmen, which was like 4 hours long, and it was like him doing commentary on the movie the entire time. And I had like as many at Comic-Con will attest to, you have way too many things going on at Comic-Con at once. So I was like, at the back of my mind, I was like, at the end of the night, for sure, I'll go check out the Zack Snyder like panel because he'll still be there, and it's a super long movie, and I'll be there for part of it because I have these other things that are more interesting to me going on. And so at the very last 20 minutes of the movie, I show up, I sit in the audience of 13 people. 13 people at Comic-Con for Zack Snyder's panel of where he's commentating for Watchmen, and he's like kind of pleading, but also kind of shaming the people in the audience as he's talking. He's like, it's like, come, and this literally, he did say this. He's like, come on, guys, like, there's only a few more minutes left in the movie, you know, like, let's act a little more awake. Or something of that nature. Like, he's just trying to get people a little inspired. And I saw him after, and he was kind of nice and everything. I was like, this guy's all right. I'm a Snyder fan. He seems kind of cool. But then that was the wrong path to take. Because that path took me to paying money to see the movie Sucker Punch, which, again, the Russo stuff really comes in here. Because Sucker Punch is a movie where he had, it seems to me, because I know he wrote it, he created these characters, and he shot the movie. He was like very hands-on on every creative aspect. And that movie is fucking awful. It's just a total clusterfuck, and it is literally one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I think it has a 22% on Rotten Tomatoes, if I'm not mistaken. But just really bad. And if you want to know, like, if you want to start drawing the correlations between Russo and Snyder, start drawing it there, basically. But also Superman Man of Steel, which came out a little bit later, because he really just didn't understand the character of Superman. And Vince Russo certainly is written for characters where it just didn't feel authentic to the character, right? So, but beyond that, Batman, Superman is horrible. And I have to say something, because we can't just like totally say that these are all Russian bots and write it off. Like, there are legitimate people out there. I believe there are legitimate people out there that think the problem with Justice League was not Snyder, it was Joss Whedon. And Joss Whedon, if you put up like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Firefly, Serenity, like also the show Angel was pretty good. The man who brought all the Avengers together in 2012 and made that movie when no one thought that would be a good, like, there were a lot of people that were like, they can't make all these characters matter in this movie at all. It's going to be a clusterfuck. It'll be fun. I'll buy a ticket, but that's not going to be a very good movie when they make the Avengers. And it was like the best movie they had made at that point. And it still stands up as one of the very best Marvel movies. Joss Whedon can go. All right. He's got game. And I know that he's got some controversy around him, but as a creative genius, he is a creative genius. Zack Snyder, no, that's not a real thing. And it just to think that it was like Joss's fault. Also, he helped make the Toy Story movie. You know, like, this guy's legit. Zack Snyder, what has he really done, man? Like, what's the best thing you say about Zack Snyder?
I really like the Dawn of the Dead remake. That was really good.
And I talked to other people that hated that movie because they didn't like it versus the old one. But I did like that movie. I did like Dawn of the Dead. 2003, I think it came out.
2004. And you were right about the Sucker Punch tomato meter.
Yeah, 22%. Which I think like Batman versus Superman and Justice League are like around 30%. So that's really not like a far cry from each other. And yeah, I think it's gonna be awful. I watched the trailer, and well, I guess another thing is he's getting like 5 years almost from when it originally came out, and now his like redone version, you know, his original vision, and like that's just like, yeah, I would love to do a great paper, but like 5 years after it was due and turn it in for like full points, right? That'd be great. That's not the way the real world works and all. And so 5 years basically he's getting to redo it, and he's getting complete, I think, a lot of creative control in the sense that like it's over 4 hours. And I feel like I don't feel like even MCU would do that. I know they did like 3 hours for Endgame, but like even like there's just no, I don't know if there's a comic book movie out there that should ever be 4 hours, like even your best one, you know, let alone this. So that screams to me like something Snyder wanted to do, and they're like, sure, man, you go ahead and do that. That's great. Do whatever you want. And the trailer looked to me like, I don't know, I usually don't bitch about CGI because like I think that's kind of stuff silly, but some people are really into it. But it did look kind of like a video game, and not in a good way, like the trailer. The CGI was just like basic, so I don't know. Yeah, so it'll suck. I'm definitely gonna watch it.
4 hours, Crane? You're gonna make am I gonna have to watch that so we can review it for this thing? I'll do it, but
yeah, I'm trying to think like is that like how torturous is that?
But I'll do it. But I will do it under protest though. But I will still do it. I'm a team player.
I gotta think about it. Because I feel like I almost shouldn't do like I shouldn't even have to watch it, you know. And I kind of want to watch it to watch a car crash, right? But and that's the thing. Like you watch really bad movies to laugh at them and everything. Like you don't. None of those really bad movies that you laugh at are 4 hours long. They're like 90 minutes long. Yeah. So what the fuck? And I think what a lot of people are going to do is they're going to break it up. You know, they're going to watch into pieces and whatever, and you know, go from there. So it comes out March 18th. I don't want to say right now we're going to review it yet because honestly, folks, it's tough. If we really run out of ideas, then we'll talk.
Just watch 4 episodes of Doom Patrol. That'll be a much better use of our time. But
Doom Patrol,
yes. Dave, I am just here for the ride. You pick whatever you want. I can merely take suggestions, but I'm just using that as a joke.
Yeah.
If you watch something and kill 4 hours, I would recommend the average person watch that as opposed to this tire fire.
Yeah. I think we have a few more minutes left. Do you watch Wandavision this week?
Yeah.
So it turns out it was Wanda all along. Not Agnes, which it tricked us on the second to last episode. And I mentioned it before. I think it was like one of 2 or 3 theories I put out there. But, you know, I was like, it could totally be Scarlet Witch. And it appears totally is Wanda, who is perhaps now the Scarlet Witch, I should say. Yeah. I really like the intro with Agnes's like backstory of Salem, and of course that was like a version of that was in the comics, you know, that Salem background. Shows is hitting it on all cylinders. We have a white Vision now, so that's like so West Coast Avengers and cool. Actually, we're recording this on Thursday, so in a few hours, you know, I'll be able to watch the final episode and see it all go down. Like, how's it gonna wrap up? Any thoughts, Tony?
No, I thought it was a really good episode. It's a great way of explaining everything. I feel like I understand what the show was, but had this been the show from the get-go, I feel like the show would be a much bigger deal. I watched that first episode and I'm like, if it wasn't for the fact that I was doing the show, I'd be like, no, I'm passing on this. If this is what we're getting, no thank you. If we knew from the get-go that this is what the show was going to be and the quality of the show, I think more people would have been on board and it would have been as popular as something like, you know, Mandalorian. This show is still really popular, but I just feel like it didn't do themselves any favor by doing this slow build-up, this slow reveal. And it's like, okay, had we just known from the get-go this was the program, I feel it would have been better.
Like that.
They had a cute idea for an episode, which is I was down for that, but then it was just such a slow burn that when we finally got it, it's like, oh, this is really cool. I really wish everybody else knew about this.
Yeah, I think they just had the kind of like reputation where you're like, hey, we're gonna go somewhere with this. You can trust in us. You can trust in the brand, the MCU. And I totally did. And to me, like, honestly, like, Wanda's whole childhood of where she, like, watched Dick Van Dyke as a kid and this and that, and it's kind of like how she learned about America, which a lot of Americans don't think about, but that's how a lot of the world learns about us, is not just our television, but our old television. So I love that. You know, it's kind of stuff I used to watch as a kid. I really connected to that. So in the earlier episodes I loved, and I love how just, like, the story is arched. Story's gone, you know, so deep, and I would say easily episode 8 has such a depth to it. It's like the best episode, and just kind of that's the thing. You start slow, build to better and better episodes. So they're doing well. I think 9 could be the best one. We'll get to see what happens.
Yep.
And I think we're running out of time. So next week we'll talk about AEW Revolution. Do a review of that. And I'm sure some other stuff too. So, and I would assume the last episode of WandaVision. So, Until then, folks, I'm David.
I'm Tony.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.